Everybody, it's Dana. Welcome to Q&A Minutes. This is something new that I wanted to give a try, and its continuation will be largely dependent on feedback from all of you and whether it is actually being used and if it's helpful to those of you who are trying to do some problem solving and training with your dogs. So I appreciate those of you who posted questions, and we're going to spend a few minutes. I see Taryn's head. Say hi, Taryn. See if we can get her in there. Hi, Taryn. We're going to spend a few minutes covering Q&A. So the first question that I got was from Beth Sroka about a dog that's barking and doing a lot of barking with for a lot of variety of reasons, I guess. And so I guess, you know, in that thread you mentioned that you think the dog may be anxious. And if that's true, and I don't know that right now, but if the dog does have anxiety of some sort, it's important to figure out what the root of that anxiety is and try to address it. It could be, you know, energy plays a very interesting role in dogs' behavior, and sometimes they respond poorly to energy. But anxiety is something that I take super serious and try to figure out what the root of the issue is and do something about it. But let's just assume the dog's barking, and we're going to take sort of the anxiety piece out of the equation for a minute. But the people are walking down the street, the UPS guy, trucks outside, dogs are barking, whatever, and our dog is barking out the window or barking inappropriately, and we want him to stop. You've got several options with degrees of correction that might help you get this problem resolved. The first is just teaching the dog to be quiet. And so what you can do when the dog is barking, so he's rah, 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 that moment that he pauses, we name it quiet or enough, whatever words feel best to you about getting them to stop, and reward the quiet. So it gets named, it gets rewarded. In time, the theory is that we can create the response by giving the command. So right now we're working it backwards, where dog gives us a moment of silence, we name, we reward. In time, we should be able to give the command and the dog perform the response. It doesn't always work for many dogs. In some dogs, you can recall them. If you've got a good foundation of obedience, you can tell them to come, to stay, to sit, to whatever, go to their place. And every time they start to bark inappropriately, they're given something else to do. That can be a deterrent and a way to stop the poor behavior as well. For other dogs, we often have to get a little more corrective. And you've got a couple of options with that. One is virtually no cost whatsoever, and it's a process, I guess you could call it, dubbed by a trainer of mine named Gary Wilkes that I've met at a couple of trainers conferences, and spend some time with him on Facebook and in some trainers forums. But he dubbed a process called the bonker, or to bonk the dog. And basically, you take a rolled up hand towel. So is it aversive? Yes, you could definitely consider that because it's not positive treats and praise and hugs and kisses, but it's certainly not going to be something that is harmful to your dog. It may be alarming to your dog. They don't like things being hurled at them, especially their heads, but this can work for most situations. So the dog's barking out the window inappropriately or sitting on his place barking inappropriately. You tell him no, and you toss the bonker his general direction. Even if you whap him with it across the body or along his butt or whatever, you're not going to hurt him. It's a rolled up hand towel, and he's going to get the message from you through the verbal no, followed by the oh my Lord, things are flying at me. And usually after a couple of the bonks, with, consistency, they decide that's not something they ought to be doing. Your other alternative is a pet corrector, and I actually use the pet convincer. Let me see if I can get this on the screen here. Pet convincer. They make different levels of models here, but this is basically canned air. It has a little canned air cartridge. You can order the refills online, and they sell a similar product at the pet store called the pet corrector, but to my knowledge those are not refillable where these are. And basically it is truly just canned air. So it creates a burst of very cold air. It makes a sound. Hopefully you can hear that. And dogs don't really like it. So the dog's barking, you say no and spritz them. This is something you would not want to aim towards their face because it is high pressured air. And so we certainly don't want to aim toward the eyes or anything like that. But aiming across the shoulder, the ears, their butt, across their back, any of that sort of stuff, this is a great deterrent to inappropriate behavior. So we shout out no and a spritz, and they're usually done with that behavior. This can also be used effectively for things like jumping and some other silly nonsense that our dogs often do. Some people use the water bottle. I'm not as much a fan of the water bottle these days as I am of something like these. Some dogs learn to like the water, and it's not quite as effective in my opinion. If those things don't work, then you could certainly escalate the level of correction to using something like a bark collar or an e-collar. And I am totally not opposed to those. I know people who have dogs that are barking in their apartments. They are at risk of getting evicted or kicked out of their homes because their dog is being an idiot barking. And if that's the route we have to take with some of these dogs, then I will absolutely advise that and make sure that people use those tools effectively and get those problems resolved pretty quickly. So give a couple of those things a try and see how it works. So another question that we got came from Amy, and she's asking about having to leave her dog at home and his level of boredom while she's gone. The truth of the matter is, I would say, Amy, don't worry about it. If your dog's crated while you're gone to work, I think that's okay. Even if he's home on the couch, we want dogs to be calm and relaxed inside the home anyway. We don't want them looking for things to get into. We don't want an excited mind. We don't want lots of energy taking place throughout the day. Those energies and activities and all of those things should be saved for when we're doing training, a nice long structured walk, or structured playtime, whether that includes throwing the ball, agility, obedience lessons, or whatever. We want those activities saved for when they are supervised and learning and participating in activities with us, not while we're gone away from the home. Energy should be pretty much low-key, and the dogs stay nice and relaxed while we're out. So I think you're doing the right things by having somebody come let him out during the day so he gets a potty break, and that you're taking him for a couple of walks each day. I think that's fantastic that he's getting a couple of miles in. Most dogs probably don't get that. But the other thing that I would say maybe is, in addition to your walk, turn that into some training activities, some game plays, anything that is going to be more mentally stimulating than physically stimulating. And dogs usually really find a great balance and a great way of thriving under those activities. So in a similar vein, Christina posted about what to do with her puppy, a very young puppy. who's getting bored on some of the rainy days because they can't get outside and do much. The answer is kind of the same. Don't be hesitant to put your dog in a downstay or a place command for some duration work. The mental stimulation that we give these dogs is as important as the activities that we give them, and helping them learn that they don't have to be doing something 24/7. Most dogs sleep most of the time, so the fact that we're doing a lot of these additional activities with them is fantastic, and just don't feel like they have to be doing something often or throughout most of the day. Having said that, there are plenty of activities that you can put into place through using scent games. 80% of our dog's brain is based in olfactory senses. And so when we tap into that, not only are we giving them something that they are bred and instinctively looking to do, we're challenging them mentally and physically as well. So there are lots of scent games that you can play with your dog, and I have a few of them listed out on my website. So if you go to my website and look, there's a menu item called Dog Training Tips. You will find a few scent games listed there, and I have a few others that I can email out as well if you're interested in even more games to play. But then teach the dog something else, right? So we've taught, and I know Dexter, we've taught a lot of the obedience skills, but now teach some more fun things, or make the challenge of the obedience even harder. But you can teach him to roll over, you can teach him to high five, you can teach him to retrieve something. The possibilities are absolutely endless, and it's just a matter of trying to figure out what the two of you enjoy doing together and starting to add something to that. So if there's something you're looking to teach him that's very specific, I'm a big fan of YouTube. You can find just about anything you want to learn out there for teaching your dog some new skills. So give those things a try. Let's see, what else do we have? Tracy posted that her dog Larry is getting to be stressed out a little bit by outdoor noises, specifically some construction trucks and such that are in their neighborhood now. So sound is a big deal to dogs. They hear a whole lot better than we do, and if a dog has some anxiety-based issues to begin with, sound can certainly be a thing that escalates a bit more. So you often hear dogs that are Thunderphobia or fear of cars that backfire. Not that we have that problem these days as much as we did many years ago, but gun dogs or dogs that are around shooting ranges are often fearful of those big sounds that they are not familiar with. So the process is kind of the same regardless of whether they're afraid of thunder or a truck that's making noise in your street. And that really is to do some counter conditioning work. So spend some time when they hear those sounds, they are given reward for staying calm. They're praised and rewarded for staying calm. We often say when a dog has Thunderphobia, for example, that it's a great time to put them to work doing their obedience skills or duration downstay. So I don't know how much of this you can do, since trucks in a construction zone are often much longer. They're active a lot longer than a thunderstorm might be. But try to do some counter conditioning work with Larry so that when he hears those sounds, there is a new positive association created about it, so that those sounds are less stressful to him. You might even record those sounds so that you can play them in shorter intervals, and they're sort of playing in the background on your laptop while you guys are doing some training or watching TV or just hanging out in the evenings, so that he hears it at a very low level and he starts to get really desensitized to those sounds. So I see in here you're telling me that he's hiding under the table. I would say if that's, I personally, I think, would try to block that. I think I would leash him up, keep him with me, and keep him active doing some other things, so that his focus is less about what he's hearing and more about the things that are going to earn him praise and reward and a sense of accomplishment by doing something new and fun with me. So counter conditioning, desensitization work is the solution to that. If you get stuck, give me a call and I'll try to help you get some more specifics. But put him to work. That's the answer, is put him to work so that he's learning to do some other things during those times those activities in your neighborhood are taking place. Okay, and so our last question comes from Katie, and it's about an 11-week-old puppy that has been really good about going to the potty outside without a leash on. And usually this dog comes back, but recently has started wandering off and not coming back in. Yep, that's what puppies do. So your puppy is moving more into those test the water, teenage, obstinate type periods of time. Puppies challenge boundaries and rules all the time. They test the waters. And so I would encourage you to keep little puppy on a leash, maybe a long line, so that she has the opportunity to go outside and be independent, and you still have a means to correct her and bring her back in the house. When we teach recall, and we start obedience skills at about 12 weeks old or 4 months, when we tell our clients to practice recall, we tell them to practice on the leash. We never want to give the opportunity for the dog to hear, "Come," and choose not to show up. We want to be able to reinforce that and reel that puppy in to us. If they're off leash and we are not convinced that they have a reliable recall, and they won't at this age, call them with some other words like, "Let's go inside. Come on, I'll give you a treat," whatever. If they are leashed up, call them to come and you can reinforce it. If they are not leashed up, use other words. So you need to really start practicing the recall. And that can be a reward with a treat every single time, especially at this age. The other thing that I want to say about puppies is they are going to go through lots of developmental periods, including a stage of independence that I think you're starting to see right now. But they're also going to go through this fear imprint phase. So things will spook and startle and get the puppy all out of sorts. This happens a little later, maybe in the 6 to 8 month range. It could even be a little bit later than that. But puppies go through a fear phase. And we advise people when we do our puppy consultations and in our puppy guide that no puppy should be off leash in an unsecured area until they have a rock solid, reliable recall and are a little bit more mature, moving closer to that 1 year old range. So solution for you now is use your leash, practice recall every single day, offering your puppy a treat reward or even their kibble, part of their meal. That's how they earn their meal, is by recall to you. But practice it every single day. Take them out to go potty on their leash if necessary. And if they're out without a leash on, don't call them to come unless you have a means to reinforce it. Use other words. And as your puppy matures into that 6 to 8 month old range, make sure that if you're taking them outside of your fenced area, that you have them on a leash and or a significantly reliable recall, so that they don't get startled and spooked and you've got them running away from you. So you're just in the terrible teens where they are testing the waters, and you need to work through that. So I hope all of you have found this helpful. If you have other questions or even any follow-up to the things that we're talking about here, please let me know. And I would love some feedback on whether you find this format of communication helpful. If so, I'll keep at providing you all some Q&A opportunities. Have a great day, and remember, it's a great day to train your dog.